crystalline spires of the Galactic Unity Hall shimmered under the artificial suns of Zenith, their fractal patterns casting prismatic shadows across the circular debate floor. 100 holographic banners floated above the assembly, each representing a species of the Federation. In the highest observer tier, a small cluster of humans sat isolated in their plain grey uniforms, their unadorned appearance stark against the bioluminescent robes and chitinous armor of the alien delegates below. Captain Elias Vance kept his breathing steady as the Vorak Councillor's voice boomed through the chamber. The human structures in Cygnus Reach are an eyesore, Councillor Vexis declared, his forearms sweeping through a holographic projection of squat human habitats, primitive durasteel boxes with no energy shielding, no aesthetic harmony. They violate 17 galactic construction ordinances. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. Vance's fingers tightened around the data chip in his pocket, the edges biting into his palm. He'd seen this coming for months. Ever since the first human colony ships had reached Cygnus Reach, the Federation had found new ways to call their architecture uncivilized. Ambassador Krelix of the Zeperian Dominion rose next, his elongated limbs unfolding like a spider emerging from its web. These, what do they call them? Homes. The word dripped with condescension. They're fire hazards, death traps. The Federation cannot allow such dangerous structures to remain in a shared stellar neighborhood. Vance felt Lieutenant Chen stiffen beside him. They're just looking for an excuse, Chen muttered under his breath. We've had 0 structural failures in 3 years. Below them, the holographic projection zoomed in on a human apartment complex, its angular lines contrasting sharply with the organic curves of nearby Zeperian towers. Red warning symbols flashed across its surface as Krelix continued. See how their materials lack proper energy dispersion. One plasma storm and these boxes would cook their occupants alive. That is bullshit, Chen whispered. Our shielding's different, not inferior. That durasteel can take a direct hit from. Vance silenced him with a look. They'd argued this point a dozen times in committee meetings. The Federation didn't care about facts, only about maintaining their aesthetic standards. The vote proceeded with brutal efficiency. One by one, species representatives raised luminous appendages or pulsed their agreement through neural links. When the final tally displayed, Faye, in favor of demolition, Vance wasn't surprised. Only the Tarkelians had abstained, their amphibious faces unreadable behind moisture masks. Demolition crews will begin within the cycle, Vexis announced, his voice carrying the smug satisfaction of someone who'd just won more than a simple vote. The Cygnus Reach will finally be cleansed of these primitive structures. As the assembly dissolved into congratulatory chatter, Krelix floated up to the human observation tier. His compound eyes glittered with something between pity and triumph. Captain Vance, he said, mandibles clicking in what passed for a Zeperian smile. Surely you understand this is for the greater good. Your people will be relocated to proper habitats. Vance kept his face neutral. Proper by whose standards, Ambassador? By civilized standards. Krelix gestured to the holograms still displaying human architecture. You can't seriously believe these boxes represent suitable living spaces. They've housed humanity for centuries, Vance said, through wars, climate disasters, even asteroid strikes. Krelix's antennae twitched. Exactly my point. You built for survival, not for living. There is no art in your structures, no harmony, just brute functionality. Chen opened his mouth, but Vance spoke first. Function has its own beauty, Ambassador, and our buildings serve their purpose well. The Zeperian made a dismissive gesture, his exoskeleton rippling with indigo patterns of amusement. Well, soon they'll serve no purpose at all. The Vorak Demolition Corps is quite efficient. Your homes will be gone within days. As Krelix glided away, Chen turned to Vance, his face tight with anger. They can't do this. Those colonies have 50,000 people. Where are they supposed to go? Vance finally pulled the data chip from his pocket, turning it over in his fingers. "They're not going anywhere, Lieutenant, but the vote means nothing," Vance said, his voice low, "because they made one critical mistake." Chen frowned. "What mistake? They assumed our buildings are just buildings." Vance slipped the chip back into his pocket. "Let them try to tear them down. They'll learn soon enough why human architecture looks the way it does." Below them, the Federation delegates celebrated their victory, their laughter echoing through the crystalline hall. None of them noticed the small smile playing at the corners of Captain Vance's mouth. None of them realized that in all their studies of human culture, they'd never truly understood one simple fact. Everything humanity built, it built to last and to fight back. The Vorak dreadnought Worldbreaker hung in the void like a jagged blade, its plasma wreckers pulsing with hungry energy. Below it, the human colony of New Halifax sprawled across the planet's surface. Ugly, blocky durasteel domes clustered together like stubborn mushrooms after rain. Commander Lyra Tal of the Vorak Demolition Corps flexed her clawed hands, her chitinous armor reflecting the dull glow of the wrecking beams powering up. "Pathetic," she hissed through her vocal modulator. "Look at these hovels. No energy shielding, no harmonic stabilization, just boxes." Her second in command, a hulking Vorak named Krax, chuckled. "Primitive fire hazards, just like the Council said. Ready the primary cutter." Inside the colony, Engineer Marcus Rook wiped grease from his hands and squinted at the sky. The Worldbreaker's shadow darkened the streets, its wrecking arms unfolding like the legs of some grotesque insect. Around him, the last civilians scrambled into bunkers, their faces tight with fear. "Marcus, we gotta go," shouted a young technician, yanking at his sleeve. Rook didn't move. "Nah, I want to see this." Above, the Worldbreaker fired its first shot. A searing blue plasma beam lanced down, striking the central habitation dome. The Vorak crew cheered as the beam connected, and then the cheering stopped. The dome shuddered, its durasteel surface rippling like water struck by a stone. But it didn't collapse. It didn't vaporize. The plasma energy sank into the structure, absorbed by some unseen mechanism. Lyra Tal's mandibles twitched. What in the void? Inside the dome. Rook grinned. Alarms blared as the colony's ancient systems roared to life. Hidden conduits beneath the streets hummed, redirecting the plasma energy through a network of buried capacitors. "See, that is the thing about human buildings," Rook muttered, tapping the wall beside him. The durasteel vibrated under his fingertips, warm with stolen energy. "We don't just build 'em, we armor 'em," Above Krax snarled. Again, full power. The Worldbreaker fired a second beam, then a third. Each strike should have reduced the colony to molten slag. Instead, the structures trembled and held Lyra's comm crackled. "Commander, we're reading energy feedback in the dome erupted. Not outward, not in destruction, but upward." A concentrated lance of stolen plasma energy shot back along the wrecking beam's path, striking the Worldbreaker's underbelly. The dreadnought's shields flared and failed. Klaxons wailed as the ship listed violently. Krax was thrown against a console, his exoskeleton cracking against the metal. "Report!" Lyra screamed. "Structural breach in sectors 7 through 0 stars. Below, Rook watched through a reinforced viewport as the Worldbreaker's wrecking arms twisted, their own energy feedback overloading the systems. Chunks of molten metal peeled away from the ship's hull. "Told ya," Rook said, keying his comm. "Sergeant Hernandez." "Yeah, it worked. They bit the bait." Across the colony, other domes began to shift. Durasteel panels slid aside, revealing hidden weapon ports. Magnetic coils buried deep in the foundations hummed to life. Lyra Tal stared at the readouts in horror. This isn't demolition resistance. This is counter-engineering. Rook finished for her. though she couldn't hear him. He patted the wall again. "Welcome to human urban planning, you overgrown roaches." The Worldbreaker tried to retreat, too late. The colony's central spire unfolded, its tip splitting open like a steel flower. A concentrated burst of redirected energy punched through the dreadnought's engines. The explosion lit up the sky. Rook shielded his eyes as debris rained down, some pieces crashing into the colony's reinforced roofs and bouncing off harmlessly. He keyed his comm again. "Hey Vorak buddies," he smirked. "You might want to tell the council something." A chunk of smoldering wreckage slammed into the street outside, kicking up dust. "Human homes don't break." Rook leaned against the wall, watching the fires in the sky. "They break you." The archive beneath New Halifax smelled of rust and ozone, the air thick with the hum of ancient generators. Dr. Ava Kessler wiped sweat from her brow as she pried open the last security panel. The metal groaned in protest, revealing a terminal covered in layers of dust. "Still think our buildings are primitive, scholar," she muttered, connecting her datapad to the archaic interface. Zix, the Zepyrian historian, hovered nervously behind her, his bioluminescent frills flickering with unease. "This is a violation of Council archaeological protocols," he hissed. "These records are classified." Ava snorted. "Yeah, well, so was your demolition order." The terminal flared to life, projecting blueprints into the dim chamber. The schematics twisted in 3 dimensions, showing fractal reinforcement patterns woven into every beam and support column. Zix's frills went still. That isn't possible." Ava traced a finger along a glowing stress matrix. Earth's architects didn't just build shelters, they built responses. The blueprints shifted, revealing hidden layers, kinetic dampeners, energy redistribution nodes, even dormant weapon emplacements, disguised as structural supports. Zix's translator stuttered as he backed away. "This isn't architecture. This is siege engineering." Ava grinned. "Bingo." Above them, the ceiling shuddered as another Vorak wrecking beam struck the surface. Dust rained down, but the walls didn't so much as crack. "You don't understand," Zix whispered. "The Federation assumes human construction is crude because it lacks energy shielding. But this," he gestured wildly at the schematics. "This is worse. Your buildings don't resist force. They consume it." Ava pulled up another file, a black and white recording from Earth's last war. A city skyline flickered on screen, towers collapsing under orbital bombardment. Then, impossibly, one structure stood. Its outer layers shattered, revealing an inner skeleton of reinforced alloy. The camera zoomed in as the building's foundation extended, anchoring itself deeper into the bedrock. "See that?" Ava tapped the frozen image. "That is the Osaka Tower. Took 3 direct hits from kinetic rods. Everyone thought it'd be dust. Instead, it adapted." Zix's frills turned a sickly yellow. You designed your colonies like battlefields." Ava's smile vanished. "We designed them to survive." Another impact rocked the archive. This time, the blueprints flashed red, a damage report scrolling too fast for Zix to follow. "What is happening?" he demanded. Ava's fingers flew across the terminal. "The Vorak just hit sector phase main reactor." She paused, then barked a laugh. "Oh, they're screwed." The schematics reconfigured, showing energy pathways rerouting in real time. Zix watched in horror as the building's substructure rearranged itself, funneling the wrecking beam's energy into a network of capacitors. "No," he breathed. "No, no, no." Ava slammed a fist on the console. Yes, they triggered the fail-safes. Deep in the colony's bones, something awoke. Magnetic coils hummed to life. Reinforced plating shifted like living armor. And in Sector Fae, where the Vorak's wrecking beam had struck, the building's outer shell flexed, then fired back. Zix's translator emitted a high-pitched whine. "You have to stop this. The Council will..." The council should have read the fine print, Ava snapped. She pulled up a decades-old document, the original colony charter, buried in subsection Phi. A single line glowed ominously. All structures incorporate legacy defense protocols per Earth Defense Act Phi. Outside, the sky lit up as New Halifax's central spire absorbed the Vorak's next attack and returned fire. Zix collapsed against the wall. You knew this would happen. Ava watched the energy readings spike. We hoped. The archive trembled as the colony's hidden systems fully activated. Somewhere above, the Worldbreaker was learning a very painful lesson about human architecture. Ava turned to Zix, her eyes hard. Tell your council something for me. The Zephyrian stared at her, frills limp with dread. She leaned in. You don't demolish human homes, you arm them. The Worldbreaker's primary wrecking beam ignited with a hum that shook the atmosphere. Overseer Krax watched from the command deck, his four eyes narrowed in satisfaction as the plasma charge built to critical mass below. The human colony's central spire stood like a defiant middle finger against the Vorak's technological might. Pathetic, Krax muttered, adjusting the targeting array. Their structures can't even blink. His second in command, a hulking Vorak named Dras, chuckled as he monitored the energy readings. Shall we record the collapse for the archives? The council enjoys human disappointments. Krax didn't bother answering. He tapped the firing sequence. The beam lanced downward, a searing column of blue, white annihilation. It struck the spire's apex, and for a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the spire shivered, not collapsed, not vaporized. Shivered. Krax leaned forward. Why isn't it? The spire's surface rippled, hexagonal panels along its length flared crimson, then absorbed the beam's energy like a sponge drinking water. Alarms blared across the Worldbreaker's bridge as power levels spiked. Overseer, Dras barked. The beam, it's reversing. Krax barely had time to register the warning before the spire fired back. The reflected beam, now tinged bloody red, screamed upward. It punched through the Worldbreaker's shields like they were paper. Krax had 1 second to see the molten scar racing across the deck toward him. Then the world turned white. Sergeant Cole Rust Hernandez ducked as debris from the exploding dreadnought rained over New Halifax bunker complex. The shockwave rattled his teeth, but he couldn't stop grinning. Over the comms, his militia squad whooped like drunk college kids. Did you see that? Private Chen yelled. Their big bad wrecking ball just kaboomed itself. Rust keyed his mic. All units. Status check. Anyone still breathing? A chorus of affirmatives crackled back. Behind him, Engineer Rook was hunched over a jury-rigged console, his fingers flying across the keys. Spires holding at Phi capacity, Rook reported, and get this, the other structures are sinking. Rust squinted through the bunker's viewport across the colony. Human buildings were moving. Durasteel panels slid aside, revealing recessed weapon ports. Foundations extended magnetic tethers like roots seeking water. One apartment complex's roof split open, unfolding a massive railgun battery. Sweet mother of Rust breathed. Rook smirked. Told you we build different. On what was left of the Worldbreaker's bridge, Demolition Overseer Krax clawed his way out of a smoking console. His exoskeleton was cracked, leaking greenish hydraulic fluid. Half his crew were paced on the walls. The other half were screaming. His comms fizzed to life. Worldbreaker, this is Zephyrian Cruiser Elegance. What in the void just happened? Krax coughed up something bitter. The buildings, he rasped. A new alarm cut him off. The Elegance's captain shrieked over the channel. Something's grabbing us. Krax staggered to the cracked viewport below. New Halifax Western District had unfurled. Magnetic tethers, each as thick as a starship's hull, had lashed upward, wrapping around the Elegance's engines. The cruiser's thrusters flared, But the tethers held. Slowly, inexorably, the ship was being dragged into the atmosphere. Crack's mandibles clicked in horror. This violates all construction treaties. In the colony's central bunker, Captain Vance watched the feeds with cold satisfaction. The data chip in his hand felt suddenly heavier. "Sir," Lieutenant Mara Singh said, her voice tight with adrenaline. "The other colonies are reporting in same phenomenon. Their structures are fighting back." Vance allowed himself a small smile. "Patch me through to the Council's emergency channel." The comms officer hesitated. "They're, already calling us." Vance took the headset. The moment he activated it, Councillor Vex's voice screeched through, distorted with panic. "What have you done? Your primitive huts are destroying our fleets." Vance waited for the noise to subside. Then calmly, "You didn't demolish our homes, Councillor." On the view screen, the Elegance's hull groaned as the tethers pulled it closer to the waiting railguns. "You activated them." The holographic displays in the Galactic Unity Hall flickered violently as live feeds from Cygnus Reach flooded the chamber. Councillor Vexis's 4 hands clutched the edge of her floating podium, her chitinous plates vibrating with barely contained panic. The other delegates' bioluminescent patterns flashed emergency colors as they watched a human durasteel spire absorb another plasma volley from the Vorak wreckers, then fire it back with terrifying precision. "That is impossible," shrieked the Zeperian science liaison, his frills standing straight up. "Primitive structures can't." The feed cut to New Halifax's western quadrant, where a cluster of human storage silos unfolded like metallic blossoms. Hidden railgun arrays emerged from what had appeared to be agricultural domes. A Vorak demolition barge exploded in a fireball that lit up the entire council chamber. Captain Vance finally stood from the human observer's bench. His boots echoed across the suddenly silent hall as he approached the central floor. The data chip in his palm glowed a steady blue. "You wanted to see human architecture, Counselor?" Vance's voice carried across the murmuring aliens. He flicked the chip toward the main projector. "Let me show you what you're really dealing with." The holograms shifted to display Earth's ancient war archives, centuries of schematics scrolling too fast for most species to follow. Dr. Kessler's voice played over the footage. Human construction code Phi-B, last updated during the Martian secession wars. All colony structures incorporate reactive armor matrices and ENOF. Vexis's translator implant crackled with distortion. She pointed a clawed finger at the feeds where 3 more Vorak ships were tumbling from orbit, caught in the magnetic tethers of what appeared to be simple foundation pilings. "This violates every construction treaty in the Federation." Vance didn't blink. "You didn't read the fine print, Counselor. Article Phi. Subsection Phi of the Galactic Construction Accords explicitly allows for defensive architectural measures in contested territories." A new feed showed the Worldbreaker's wreckage burning in Cygnus Reach's upper atmosphere. The dreadnought's once proud plasma wreckers now protruded from the central spire like grotesque decorations. Sergeant Hernandez's laughter crackled over the comms. "Looks like we're doing some remodeling of our own." Scholar Zix floated forward on his anti-grav disc, his eye stalks twitching nervously. "Captain Vance, surely you understand our concern. These aren't dwellings. They're planetary defense installations disguised as civilian structures." Vance tapped another command into his wrist console. The displays shifted to show Earth cities, New York, Tokyo, Moscow, their skyscrapers highlighted with the same defensive signatures. "Every human building since Phi has these systems. We just usually keep them dormant." He zoomed in on a Manhattan apartment complex. "That coffee shop, concealed point, defense lasers, the park over there. Subsurface missile silos." The chamber erupted. The Octavian delegate's tentacles flailed in distress. "You mean to tell us your entire species lives inside sleeping weapons?" "Not sleeping," Vance corrected, patient. He turned to face the panicking council. "You came to tear down what you called primitive fire hazards. The main screen split into 100 feeds showing human colonies across the galaxy, each one now bristling with awakened defenses. Turns out our homes didn't appreciate the inspection. Alarms blared as new reports flooded in. The Zeperian border stations were detecting energy spikes from every human settlement in their territory. Ambassador Krelix's frills turned a sickly yellow as he watched a residential block on Gamma Prime extend solar. Panel wings that reconfigured into plasma reflectors. Vexis slammed her primary claws against the podium. Order the Vorak fleet to retreat immediately. It is too late for that, Vance said quietly. The main display now showed the USN Defiance arriving at Cygnus Reach, not to reinforce the colonies, but to link their dormant systems into a unified network. Buildings across 3 continents synchronized their targeting arrays. Lieutenant Singh's face appeared on screen, her helmet visor reflecting the fiery demise of another Zeperian cruiser. Admiral Yulth, we've got your ships locked in a crossfire between a middle school and a laundromat. Your call. The chamber's gravity plates fluctuated as several delegates fainted. Vance picked up the discarded data chip, his expression grim. You wanted to judge human construction standards, Counselor. Now you understand, we don't just build shelters. Outside the observation windows, the distant flash of another exploding Vorak ship punctuated his words. We build fortresses. Silence fell over the Galactic Unity Hall. The only sound was the constant ping of incoming damage reports. Somewhere in the chaos, Scholar Zix was whispering to his recorder. Note for the archives, humanity's greatest military advantage isn't their ships or soldiers, it is their goddamn real estate. The Zeperian fleet hung in low orbit like a swarm of angry wasps, their sleek silver hulls bristling with weapons. Admiral Yulth's flagship, the Celestial Whip, dominated the formation, its forward plasma lances charging with a sickly green glow. Below them, the human colony of New Halifax looked like a child's toy city, small, blocky, utterly defenseless. Or so they thought. All batteries, prepare to fire, Yulth commanded, his 4 hands dancing across the tactical console. Reduce those primitive structures to molten slag. Lieutenant Mara Singh crouched inside what the Vorak had dismissed as a storage shed. The reinforced bunker hummed around her, its walls vibrating as hidden systems came online. Her fingers flew across a rusted keyboard, inputting codes older than the Galactic Federation itself. "All right, you ugly bastards," she muttered. "Let's show you why you don't mess with human real estate." Across the colony, durasteel panels slid aside. Roofs folded back like blooming flowers from beneath false facades. Massive railgun barrels emerged, their magnetic coils humming to life. The buildings weren't collapsing, they were transforming. On the Celestial Whip, a junior sensor officer suddenly straightened in his seat. "Admiral, energy spikes from the surface, the human structures." Yulth never got to hear the rest. New Halifax erupted. 1,000 railgun rounds streaked upward in perfect synchronization. The first volley punched through 3 Zeperian frigates before they could raise shields. Atmosphere vented from gaping holes as the ship spun wildly out of control. What in the void? Yulth's mandibles clacked in alarm. Evasive maneuvers, all ships. The second volley hit. This time, the rounds were smarter. They adjusted trajectory mid-flight, curving around shield projectors to slam into engine nacelles. The Celestial Whip shuddered as a dozen impacts rocked its starboard side. Mara's laughter crackled over the colony, wide comms. "You came to tear down houses? Bad move." She punched a final command sequence. "Now meet the landlords." Deep beneath New Halifax, ancient reactors, buried during the colony's founding, flared to full power. The entire settlement thrummed with energy. Street grids lit up with targeting matrices. Park benches folded away to reveal missile pods. Even the damn lampposts extended anti-aircraft batteries. "Admiral," screamed the tactical officer, "the human structures are forming some kind of coordinated defense network." Yolth watched in horror as his holographic display updated. The colony wasn't just fighting back, it was sinking. Buildings linked targeting data through buried fiber. Optic cables older than the Federation itself. A water treatment plant locked onto the Celestial Whips Bridge. The shot came not from a military installation, but from what had appeared to be a simple filtration tower. The plasma lance hit dead center. Yolth's last sight was the ceiling collapsing as his command chair melted beneath him. In orbit, the remaining Zeperian ships broke formation. Some tried to flee, others fired wildly at the surface. None of it mattered. The colony's AI, a relic from Earth's last war, had already calculated every possible trajectory. A schoolhouse's roof slid open. From its playground, a salvaged nuclear warhead, repurposed as a heating core, according to the building permits, streaked toward a fleeing cruiser. The explosion lit up the night side of the planet. Mara watched the fireworks from her bunker, sipping stale coffee. On her screen, the last Zeperian ship attempted a desperate jump to FTL. The colony's central admin building, disguised as a simple municipal office, unleashed a magnetic pulse that scrambled the vessel's drives. It drifted helplessly until a salvo from a residential apartment complex finished the job. All Zeperian vessels accounted for, crackled Sergeant Hernandez's voice over the radio. He was holed up in what the aliens had assumed was a simple machine shop. The building's industrial press had turned out to be a disguised orbital cannon. That is the last of them. Mara leaned back in her chair, stretching around her. The bunker's lights dimmed as the colony's systems returned to standby. Somewhere beneath her feet, the ancient reactors powered down with a contented hum. "Copy that, Rust," she said, allowing herself a grin. "Tell Earth Command the Neighborhood Watch program was a success." Outside, the dawn revealed a colony utterly unharmed and a sky full of burning wreckage. The buildings stood silent once more, their weapons retracting, their armored panels sliding back into place. To any passing observer, they looked like simple human homes again. But the galaxy would never make that mistake twice. The holographic displays in the Galactic Unity Hall flickered erratically, cycling through damage reports from a dozen systems. Ambassador Krelix's 4 hands trembled as he scrolled through the casualty lists. His bioluminescent stripes pulsed a sickly yellow, the Zeperian equivalent of pale-faced shock. Captain Vance let the silence stretch, watching alien council members shift uncomfortably in their gravity seats. The human delegation remained standing. They hadn't been offered chairs in 300 sessions. Today, no one dared suggest they sit. Krelix's voice cracked. He tried again, mandibles clicking nervously. This level of structural militarization violates 17 interstellar accords. Vance tapped his datapad. The central hologram switched to a live feed from Cygnus Reach. The Vorak Dreadnought Worldbreaker hung in broken pieces across low orbit, its wreckage still glowing from the energy feedback that had torn it apart. Human colony domes stood intact below, their surfaces now humming with active defense grids. Article 4 of the Galactic Construction Standards, Vance said calmly, exempts historical designs with cultural significance. Every beam in those structures follows patterns older than your Federation. Councillor Vexis slammed a clawed fist on the debate floor. Those patterns just destroyed a fleet. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Scholar Zix floated forward on anti-grav discs, his ocular stalks twitching. The archives, they weren't lying. Human architecture has always been a contingency plan, Vance finished. He zoomed the hologram to show New Halifax's central spire, where durasteel panels had unfolded like blooming metal flowers. Railgun barrels gleamed where decorative arches had been. You mistook our pragmatism for primitiveness. Admiral Yolth's image flickered into the chamber, transmitted from the crippled Zeperian flagship light of Zenthra. His carapace bore fresh cracks. We're detecting energy spikes from every human colony in the sector. They're linking their defense grids. Lieutenant Mara Singh's voice crackled over the comms. was in defiance to Galactic Council. Cease all demolition operations immediately, or we'll interpret it as an act of war. She paused. Though honestly, we'd prefer if you tried. Krelix rounded on Vance. You knew this would happen. Vance shrugged. We warned you. Repeatedly, he pulled up an old transmission log, a human diplomat, decades ago pleading with the council to reconsider their building codes. The recording ended with a Zephyrian delegate laughing. Your huts are an eyesore. Be grateful we're replacing them. The chamber lights dimmed as power diverted to external shields. Distant tremors shook the artificial world. Human reinforcements arriving in orbit, Vexis hissed. This is extortion. No, Vance said. This is a demonstration. He stepped onto the central platform, boots echoing in the sudden quiet. You came to tear down what you didn't understand. Now you've seen what happens when humanity's home is threatened. A new hologram bloomed, blueprints of Earth's ancient fortresses, medieval castles with killing fields and murder holes. Then Cold War bunkers, designed to survive nuclear fire. Finally, the Cygnus reached colonies, their fractal armor glowing red where demolition beams had struck. Scholar Zix whispered, they never stopped building for war. Krelix's stripes darkened to surrender. Blue, what do you want? Vance smiled. 3 things first. Full recognition of human construction rights. He held up a second finger. Reparations for every structure your wrecking fleet's damaged. The third finger came up slowly. And next time you have a zoning dispute? He tapped the datapad. The hologram shifted to show Earth's orbital defense platforms, their massive cannons aligning. Knock first. The chamber doors hissed open. Human engineers in combat X-suits marched in, their armor still scorched from colony battles. They took positions along the walls, magnetic boots clamping to the floor. Outside, the tremors grew stronger. Krelix looked at the shattered remains of his fleet on the hologram, then at Vance, then at the armed humans now flanking the council seats. His mandibles clicked once, softly. We'll draft the amendments. Vance nodded. Smart choice. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing. Every alien in the chamber tensed. Welcome, he said, to the neighborhood. And so, the galaxy learned. Humanity doesn't just build shelters. We build fortresses.